Dust rose in slow-motion swirls around Hollow Bend, catching the noon sun like drifting embers from a dying fire. Heat shimmered along the street boards, bending the world the way grief bends a spine. Evelyn Marlowe stood alone in that wavering light, her arms empty in a way that felt louder than any scream. The echo of her baby's last cry still clung to her ears, a sound that seemed to hang above the town like a ghost unwilling to leave. People watched her the way folks watch storms, from porches, from windows, from behind half-closed doors. Their silence was not kindness. It was judgment or fear or something worse, indifference wrapped in the shape of neighborly faces. Sheriff Amos Burke stood near the jailhouse, shoulders slumped, eyes refusing to meet hers. He knew Silas Crow had taken the baby as payment for her dead husband's debt. He also knew it wasn't right. But in towns like Hollow Bend, right didn't always have a voice. Evelyn walked forward on trembling legs, though she wasn't sure where she was going. The dust stuck to her dress and her grief, making her feel like she had been buried standing upright in the middle of the street. Whispers broke behind her like dry twigs. Crow always collects his due. Jonas Pike murmured loud enough for others to hear. She should have paid, another muttered. Only Mabel Crane, the aging saloon keeper with smoke-worn eyes, stepped forward and pressed a tin cup of water into Evelyn's hand. "Drink, darlin'," she whispered. "Grief burns hotter than the sun." Evelyn tried, but the water spilled down her chin. Her hands were still shaped the way they used to cradle something soft and warm. Something now gone. She felt the world tilt, felt shame coil inside her, felt herself shrinking beneath every stare turned toward her like a lantern turned too bright. Then the rhythm of hoofbeats split the heat-laden silence. A lone rider emerged through the shimmering mirage at the end of the road, broad-shouldered, heavy-booted, dust-coated. He rode as if the horse beneath him was part of him, moving with slow, unhurried certainty. A tall man with hair sun-bleached at the edges, jaw covered in several days' worth of rough beard, eyes steady as stone. Colton Ridge. A name whispered more in rumor than in greeting. A mountain man who lived beyond the pines. A man folks said once fought a bear with a broken knife, who didn't speak unless the words meant something. A man carved out of the earth rather than raised from it. He dismounted without taking his eyes off Evelyn, and for a moment the town faded around them. The dust, the whispers, the heat. He wasn't looking at her the way the others did. He wasn't looking at her like she was broken or to blame. He just saw her. She turned away, ashamed of the tears streaking her face. But her grief was a lantern. Anyone could see the flame. She walked towards Silas Crow's estate at the edge of town, driven by something primal. Maybe not hope. Maybe just instinct. Mothers move even when strength has left them. The estate rose like a shadow, cold stone, tall windows, metal gates. The kind of place that looked like it could swallow light. 2 guards stood before the gate. "I want my baby," she whispered. "No entry," one said, bored. "She has no right," the other said. Evelyn reached for the gate anyway. They shoved her back. She fell to her knees in the dust, palms scraping, breath trembling through an open wound of a heart. Somewhere behind her, she felt eyes watching, Colton's. But he didn't step forward. Not yet. This fight wasn't his. Not until she chose to stand. He approached only when she could no longer hold herself upright. He didn't speak, didn't make a show of comfort. He simply crouched beside her and set a canteen gently at her knee. His fingers brushed the earth near her, but never touched her skin. An act of respect, not distance. She shook her head, tears falling again. He set the canteen anyway. And then he sat, not close enough to crowd her, but close enough to say, "You are not alone," without a single word. People passing by slowed, watching the strange pairing. Mountain man and broken mother. Dust swirling around them like the world was holding its breath. Whispers rose. "Mountain man's gone soft. He'll bring trouble." Sheriff Amos approached, jaw tight. "You don't want to get mixed in this, Ridge." Colton didn't answer. His silence was a boundary no one wanted to cross. When the sky bruised purple with dusk, Evelyn finally rose, guided by exhaustion. Her home felt colder than it ever had. She touched the empty crib with hands that remembered weight and warmth. She whispered apologies into the wooden rails, as if the boards could carry her words to her baby. Later that night, as cicadas hummed their lonely chorus, she wandered to the old barn outside town. And she wasn't surprised when she heard footsteps behind her. Colton stood there, hat in hand, moonlight catching the quiet pain in his eyes. "My wife died birthing our child," he said softly, his voice carrying the heaviness of unspoken winters. "Little girl lived only a day. Buried them both beneath a pine tree. Sometimes the wind still sounds like her cry." Evelyn pressed a hand to her mouth, grief recognizing grief. "I couldn't save mine," he continued. "But maybe this world gives a man one chance to do right." He hesitated. "If he's brave enough to take it." She looked at him, not as a stranger, but as someone who knew the shape of her pain. And for the first time since her baby was taken, her heart steadied. Colton began appearing near her home at dawn. Quiet things, gentle things, fixing her fence, chopping wood, leaving bread on the porch. He never announced himself, never asked for thanks. But she noticed the small changes in him, the way his shoulders softened when she smiled, the way his eyes lingered when she soothed the cradle out of habit. She mended his torn glove one afternoon and left it on a stump for him to find. He picked it up like one might lift a fragile thing, carefully, gratefully. The next day, Jonas Pike barreled into town shouting rumors. "Crow's planning to sell the baby. Tonight. Red Canyon folk are coming." The world around Evelyn blurred. Her breath left her. Fear and fury surged like lightning up her spine. Colton stepped toward her. "You're not going alone." Evening lights slanted across the road as they walked together toward Crow's estate. Townsfolk emerged from porches and shadows, drawn by something electric in the air. Sheriff Amos followed, torn between duty and guilt. Crow stood at his gate like a man convinced of his own power. "You come for payment?" he sneered at Evelyn. "Or to beg again?" "I came for my child," she said, voice trembling but unbroken. "You lost that right the day you lost the money." Colton stepped forward, slow and silent. "A man who takes a child to punish her mother," he said, voice low as rolling thunder, "ain't worthy of the ground he stands on." Crow's lip curled. He waved a hand. His men drew guns. Evelyn froze. But Colton didn't reach for a weapon. He simply moved so his body shielded hers, calm as a mountain facing a storm. Sheriff Amos swallowed hard. And then, perhaps remembering the look on Evelyn's face that morning, he stepped forward. "That debt was illegal," Amos said, voice rising. "A baby ain't property. Crow, you're done." Crow lunged for Evelyn in blind anger. Colton caught his wrist mid-strike. Silence cracked open like a fault line. Then everything moved at once. Amos snapping cuffs onto Crow, the men lowering their guns under the weight of the law. Evelyn rushing past them into the house, where her baby's soft cry waited like a miracle. She emerged holding her child close, her tears soaking the baby's hair, her body shaking with relief and disbelief. Colton stepped back to give her space, eyes lowered, but two quiet tears carved lines through the dust on his face. Evelyn turned toward him, her baby nestled against her heart. She stepped closer, not needing to speak gratitude. The closeness was enough. Colton tipped his hat, but he didn't ride away. Not this time. He stood there, waiting, not claiming a place in her life, just offering one if she wanted it. She didn't ask him to stay. She simply walked beside him toward town, her child safe in her arms, the first fragile threads of a new beginning weaving themselves between their steps. And if you're listening to this now, let this moment settle in your chest like a warm ember. Sometimes the world takes more than it gives, until one quiet soul shows up and changes the shape of your grief. Remember this, grace doesn't always thunder in. Sometimes it rides toward you slow and steady, right when you think the road has forgotten your name.